Welcome to the Insomnia Project. Sit back, relax, and listen as we have a calm conversation that'll hopefully make you feel like you're just sort of drifting off, and where it takes you, it takes you. Thank you for joining the Insomnia Project. Thank you for everyone who has tweeted, made reviews, told friends about it, and reached out to us. It's always lovely to hear from all of you. My name is Marco Timpano.
I'm Amanda Barker. Here I am. Hello, hello.
Amanda, there's something that we do, thanks to you, which is frugal and awesome. And I know our listeners love a frugal tip.
I don't know what this is. Real talk, I never know what we're about to talk about.
It's true, unless you come up with the topic, and you have a couple of times.
But even then, I don't remember.
Sure. And we just let it take us where it will. So join us on this journey as we travel down the road less known.
Yeah, the path not taken.
There you go. Or
Robert Frost.
Sure, or the path that we're going to take. So
the path we choose.
I love that. The path we choose, indeed. So one of the things that I've learned from you, and now it's kind of essential, is using envelopes for scrap paper, for jotting things down.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is when we open envelopes, we don't, whether they be bills or,
donation requests from, you donate to your friend's Facebook fundraiser, and then now you're on their mailing list for the rest.
Politicians kind of vote for me letters.
Please, we would love to be able to sell your house.
Those ones that
join our real estate team.
Those kind of letters. We remove the contents, and then we have the envelopes, and many of them are just brown or white envelopes with quite a bit of writing space.
Yeah.
So it's the perfect jotting down and throwing away paper versus, sometimes you have a more elegant thing on the fridge where you write down, what you want for groceries.
But at the end of the day, I find, you can have all the little notepads in the world.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, when you want to jot something down, you're on the phone with, your bank or something, they're never around.
Right.
And you need to write down a confirmation number, or you need to jot down the medication from your doctor, or whatever.
Sure.
They're never around, and you're just grabbing that slip of paper. And often it's a bill that you're going to pay that night or whatever. So what I've done is, because we work from home more than we ever have in the past,
sure,
I actually have a music stand in our office where I do most of my Zooming. I have a little white music stand, and I have sort of a bull clip, and I have a bunch of those old envelopes that we've, carefully opened. So they're serrated kind of on one side, and then the blank backs of them. And I use them because my day-to-day work is very often running casting sessions for commercials.
Sure.
It's a very specific job, but that's what I do for the most part. And so I always need to jot down director's notes, because I might be telling people in the waiting room what they need. We want you seated with a hairbrush, whatever.
Of course.
So, or, take this type of tone, this type of approach. And so I always make sure I have a lot of those versus using paper or even a notepad, because it's already paper that's destined for recycling.
Sure.
And so if you can get one more use out of it.
Why not? And they're great for those disposable items that you're going to use that day.
Yeah.
Those thoughts that you're just going to use for a day and get rid of.
Right.
For me, it's often I'll make notes while I'm editing the podcast or while I'm doing work that I then check off and I throw that away. Or if I'm giving feedback to some of the participants who I work with regards to my business coaching, I guess you could call it.
Right.
It allows me, and it's the perfect size for a small surface. So sometimes when I'm Zooming, I don't Zoom on a big table. I'm either here in the studio or I'm in front of our laundry washing machine with the curtain drawn in front of it. And I have a small table. I don't have all the space for a large book.
Right.
The envelope beside me is the perfect pad of paper, if you will.
Yeah, it's good to have a few, like a little stack by your bedside or in your nightstand for those last little thoughts so that you know that they're captured before you drift off to sleep. So yeah, I do tend to use. I was writing on the back of envelopes anyway, just ones I hadn't opened and meant
Sure.
to open. So it's just the next step,
It's
if
almost
you will. Grocery lists, or I often will write things I'd like to get done this week or today, that kind of thing.
Sure. It's also the perfect reason to open all your bills so that you can have have the envelope for the jot down envelope, if you will, as I like to affectionately call it.
We still use accordion files in this house, which are actually, and maybe we've talked about this in the past, I don't know, but they're actually very hard to find. They used to be in every sort of stationery store or big box store even.
Sure.
And now the old school accordion file where you can throw papers and bills and whatever receipts is actually very hard to come by because so much is digital. But I still, at least for now, swear by a paper system. So I get all my receipts in paper, and which I know is maybe there's arguments 2 and 4.
Sure.
But anyway, that's how we do it. So, and I like sitting with my, watching a nice TV show.
Nothing too cerebral.
Nothing too cerebral, but still something interesting. Opening up whatever mail has sort of piled up.
Sure.
Separating out those nice clear white-backed or brown-backed envelopes so that I have a nice pile of those of stationery, and then I file, pay whatever bills, and then pile, throw things in the designated slot, like reference and research for magazines.
Sure.
Meal receipts, the water bill, things like that.
One of the things that we love about our mail carrier and our mailing system here where we live is we have a mailbox right on our front stoop, whereas a lot of people now, it seems to be going to those big sort of units where you go and you have a key, you open your mailbox with all your neighbors and you pull out your mail. Ours gets delivered pretty much to our front door. And Amanda has a system she loves, which she leaves the flap of the mailbox up, and she knows you have, or we know we have mail. When the mail carrier puts mail in, it closes the flap.
Yeah, I'm always looking. So if I know that it's down, I know somebody's left us a treat.
Sure.
For sure. Yeah, our mail carrier is nice. It's interesting. I think I'm always interested to see if people have relationships with their mail carrier, honestly. Because we seem to have a pretty good long-standing relationship with our mail carrier. We know him.
Yeah, he's wonderful.
He was having back surgery.
I've met his family, actually.
Have you really?
Yeah.
Wait, how did that happen?
Remember we used to do a on-site gig where we would have what was called a money machine.
Yeah.
And it would blow fake money.
Oh, right, yes.
And people would walk in almost like a phone booth.
People most regularly know it. Anyone who ever watched The Ellen Show, she used to do this with real money, I think, on The Ellen Show.
Sure. And it's like one of those things that I think was associated with a game show where you go in and you try to grab as much money as you can in the air.
Very popular in like 2010 to have one of these machines on your show or at your event.
Sure. And so I think it was that long ago where we worked for this, what would you call a company like that?
Big box store, really.
No, but we worked for an agency that would do promotions.
Experiential marketing.
There you go.
Is what you would call it. So those would be the people who are handing out samples on a like they're wearing branded clothing and they have a backpack. And would you like a sample of this soda or deodorant or whatever, or chocolate, whatever it is that they're handing out.
Because we had skills of performance and improv, they would hire us to do a more unique sort of brand awareness, whatever. And this time we were often hired to work the money machine. And they would fill up the machine with what we call Canadian Tire money, which was money for
I didn't know you were going to name the brand.
I mean, for Canadian listeners, they'll want to know. And this way I don't have to pretend I'm not
It's also
saying
gone the way of the dinosaur. That money doesn't exist anymore. It's all points card now.
It was money that you could use at that specific store branded with their logo or their mascot.
Every time you bought a purchase, you'd get 5 cents or 10 cents or something. And you'd save it up. And old people were notorious for saving up that Canadian Tire money.
Yes, for sure. And so we had it, and people would go into the money machine. I would throw in a handful of bills, turn on the blower, and the money would blow, and they would have, I think, 30 seconds to get all the money they could.
We had rules too.
It was crazy.
Because people were trying to, all these different
You can't
ways.
lift open your shirt or blouse and catch it inside
That
your
way.
chest. Like, there was a lot of things you couldn't
You
do.
had to grab it from the air and stuff. Remember, you'd say, grab and stuff. Grab and stuff. Yeah.
It's true.
You would get everybody to repeat back after you.
Right, because otherwise they would either not get money because they didn't know what to do, or they would open their shirts and blouses. And
Which then they'd come out and it would all fall out
Right.
everywhere. So it was always a mess.
so our mail carrier, whose name is Dominic, shows up with his mother and his father.
I don't remember this. That's unbelievable.
And so he recognized me. And
were we nearby?
Yes, we were at the Canadian Tire. That is
Like Davenport?
no, is the one that is a bit further. If we take, I think, Eglinton.
Okay.
Anyways, it's one that's not far.
That's unbelievable.
And he showed up with his folks, and I was like, oh my goodness! When you see someone you know in one particular way, and then you see them outside of that,
In their civilian clothing.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so I was really happy to see him, and I said, go in there with your family, like one at a time. And I just threw so much Canadian Tire money in there, and I let
Right.
it blow twice as long.
People would feel so rich too
Yeah.
because they would be, they come out with all these bills, but, the bills would be
$1.
20 cents. I
Yeah.
mean, they'd come out, the most you're going to make in that machine is like $4 or $5
And
probably.
that's if you were really good. Most people, the
Yeah.
average was, I think, $1.15.
Yeah.
So, but people, it was like they won the lottery.
It totally.
And he was so happy. His mother and his father and I think his father had a cane at the time, had the best time in there.
I don't remember that. Was I with you?
No,
Oh,
you
I
weren't.
wasn't.
You
Oh,
weren't.
no wonder I don't remember
Yeah, it
it.
was someone else, but
We did work a lot of them together though.
Mm-hmm.
That was during our courtship,
it's true.
I think.
It's true. And that's how I know him outside of that. So he's always been wonderful to us.
Yeah.
And I will also say that, with regards to mail, nothing makes me happier when I get a letter with a stamp that has not been canceled.
Yes, that makes you very happy to get that uncanceled stamp, and then you cut it out as close as you can, so that nobody can see.
No, I do. I go for
You have a different method?
So this
Because that's
is-
what I do. I cut it out and then re-glue it, but with the paper backing.
See, what I do is I take them when I have about 5 or 6 of them. I'll put them in a little cup with water.
I
Doesn't
see.
necessarily have to be warm. Let it sit for about 20 minutes or so, or when I get back to them, the stamp will be separated from that little piece of paper that I've cut around it.
My goodness, we're frugal, eh?
Then I put it on a paper towel, and I put a paper towel on top of it to do 2 things. Remove the water from the stamp, but also make it so the stamp isn't curled up. So sometimes I'll put something
Right.
heavy on it,
Right.
a pot or a book. And then after, half
What
an
a
hour,
process.
I'll take them. They'll be flat, uncanceled stamps that look brand new. A little bit of that glue on the back, put it in an envelope, and send it off to its merry way. And I get a free stamp, and nothing makes me happier.
You get a couple free stamps since you've saved them up, right?
Sure. And then what I do with the canceled stamps, Amanda,
What does that mean, canceled stamps?
the ones that have been stamped, so you
The ones that
cannot-
have been used.
yeah, that have no marks on them that you cannot reuse. I will save them. And there's a bunch of charities that will use old stamps. So if you send them canceled stamps, then they use them for the charity. What they'll do is they'll put them. I think what they
You should
do.
explain that, yeah, because how are they quote unquote usable?
What I think they do is they put them in little packets and then sell them to stamp collectors.
Yeah, I think that's what
they
happened.
do.
I don't know about little packets, but I think they do hold on to them because in time they will have value, and I guess they don't take up a ton of room. I don't know, but they have value, and so in time those will increase in value. But I don't know if they hold on to them so that in 10 years' time a stamp from 10 years ago has an increased value because it's from a certain year or a certain that type of thing.
I would imagine they give it to an agency that deals with the stamps, and they get a cut of whatever, however.
But it is a good thing to investigate because those used stamps, otherwise, they'll go into recycling or garbage. So if you cut them out and have a little cup somewhere nearby as you're going through your mail, using the back of those envelopes, and then putting the uncanceled stamps, the real fines, in a special cup that you then can use for future mailing, and then the canceled ones or the used ones, having them in a little cup, and then, saving them up, and then once a year sending them to your local humane society, which I think is the one that uses for us, but it changes.
It changes. There's different ones, so you have to really look it up.
Yeah.
But there are ones for different areas of the world. There's one in England that I really like, a charity. I can't remember it, but I think I'm going to send them our stamps. And what I do is I don't put it in a cup because it'll fill up quickly. Oh. But rather, I have a very wide mouth vase that is very particular and I find to be beautiful. But we don't put flowers in this vase because it looks like a row house.
Okay.
Yeah. It looks like a clay pot almost, or a vase, and it has a very wide mouth. So I just throw them in there, and I know once it's full, I have about 150 stamps in there, and it's ready to be sent out. And then I put them in an envelope and send them out.
And you could use the uncanceled stamps to put them, and if you really want to be frugal, you could seal up one of those envelopes that you opened and use those uncanceled stamps.
Right.
And then all it's taken you is a bit of your time.
You're right.
A bit of waiting and a bit of your time, and it hasn't cost you anything. And hopefully it's of some value to a charity or organization that needs it.
Also, stamps are beautiful, and if you want to use them in creative ways, so for example, if you want to make a lovely gift wrapping job for a friend for their birthday, you could take plain craft paper, wrap the gift in that, place a few beautiful canceled stamps that you've received over the year on that, or even make it so that the package looks like a package you would send to the mail and put a few canceled stamps and their name on it.
That's fun.
Yeah. I just came up with this now.
Really fun idea. I like that idea.
I have a lot of ideas when it comes to gift giving and gift wrapping and things like that.
We should do that, actually.
Why don't we do that? Because I have so many stamps, so I can give some to charity. I'll keep a couple of the very pretty ones and use them when we make gifts for people.
Are there any stamps that you have a memory of that you really like getting, since we have been talking about mail and stamps, I guess?
Yes, actually, there are a few. So the U.S. came up with an Elvis stamp many years ago. And someone sent me a letter with the Elvis stamp. I then purchased uncanceled ones, and I had them in frames.
Right.
And then there are some shark ones that I have actually right here in our studio. You can hear the crinkling of the paper. Sorry if it sounds loud, but...
No, well, you were getting excited.
Okay, you're right.
No.
Anyways, there's a bunch of stamps right here.
What are they doing here?
Well, for people who join our Patreon, I ask them to send me their address if they wish, and I send them a postcard from anywhere in the world. I have a bunch of postcards from all over the world. So I will send them a postcard, and they won't know. It'll be a random postcard thanking them for being a Patreon of our Patreon page, and just to say hi. And so I have a bunch of stamps for that I purchased at the post office.
That's really interesting. I think there was a Canadian author series of stamps that came out that I really, really enjoyed, that came out pretty recently. And
Margaret Atwood looks wonderful in that stamp, that photo of her.
Yeah. And I always enjoy, holiday-themed stamps. Even if they get religious, I don't care. I love sending holiday cards with a holiday-themed stamp. You know what I got in the mail yesterday?
What's that?
I got, you know how I was saying how when you donate to charity, you get usually like, will you join our monthly pledge kind of thing?
Sometimes they'll send a little thank you souvenirs or gifts.
Well, often what I find a lot of them are doing now, and I've gotten this a few times, is they will send you 3 or 4 or 5 cards, blank, open sort of note cards with envelopes.
Like things that could be used for birthdays or thank yous or sympathy?
Just open cards.
Okay.
So a hospital that we donate to or have donated to sent me some, so I have those. Another cancer charity sent me some, so now I have those. And then yesterday, I opened up the mail. I was going through mail, and an organization called Indspire, INDSPIRE, which helps with various projects, artistic projects for Indigenous youth here in Canada.
I'll put it in our show notes in case anybody wants to go to that particular
Sure.
site.
They sent me 3 very beautiful cards with artwork of 3 of the artists that they have been working with as part of various programs from different Indigenous communities in Canada. And I thought they were so beautiful, these 3 cards, that and they had explanations, and they had information about the artist on the back of each, what community they were from,
Sure.
how they identified with the meaning of the art, and all of that. And these were 3 sort of seasonal summer cards. One had a sort of strawberry theme. One was a bear sleeping under a summer moon.
Wonderful.
They're really beautiful anyway. And so I messaged them and said, do you sell other cards? Because although I don't think I'm in a position to do a monthly donation, I would like to continue to support your organization. And if you have more of these cards, even if I could get one
Sure.
of any of them, even if they are summer themed, I might use them as holiday cards. And or, I'd love to buy packs of cards from you if that's something that I could do. They're beautiful. And you're sending them to me as a thank you, really, for already donating. But I'm happy to purchase them, even at a markup or whatever. So
Sure.
I haven't heard back from them yet. But although they did send me something that if we donate, we could get our orange T-shirts. With every donation of a certain amount, they'll send you an orange T-shirt for
Wonderful.
a holiday here in Canada called Orange T-shirt Day. I don't know if it's a holiday, a day of remembrance.
Yes,
anyway.
It's a day of remembrance. I wouldn't call it a holiday.
But it might be have an official designation.
Sure.
In terms of calendar holidays, but not a holiday as though synonymous with a vacation or that
Right.
type of thing. So important distinction there. But in any event,
Have they gotten back to you?
they haven't yet, but it's only been a day. So hopefully I'll hear back from them, and can certainly let you know. And I actually started thinking, both in my frugality and in my want to help charities, that maybe I would start collecting all these free cards and use them as holiday cards next year.
It's wonderful. Well, Amanda, we're getting towards the end of our show, and one of our listeners Instagrammed us asking for us to share our culinary experiences in Calgary, because we had mentioned it on the last episode. So carriebeadtree.net is the Instagram person who reached out saying, share your culinary experiences. I guess we mentioned it, but didn't mention the restaurants
You know
we
what?
went
We
to.
did, but in the Patreon.
That's right.
That's what it was. So we did a deep dive in the Patreon.
And of course, you can always join our Patreon. The link is in our show notes. But we'll just pick 2 restaurants that we went to.
Why don't you pick one and I'll pick one?
Okay, I'm going to pick the Grizzly House, which is in Banff. It's technically not Calgary, but it is wonderful. It is a fondue restaurant, or that's their specialty, and it feels like a throwback to the late 60s, early 70s. It's all wood. If you go into the heart of the restaurant, it's really, really dark. Every table has a phone at arm's reach where you can call other tables, or you can call, let's say, your aunt and tell her how wonderful the meal is. And it was wonderful. The fondue was great. The service was wonderful. The atmosphere, everything. The Grizzly House in Banff is my pick.
Now, I should say that we had more than one delicious Korean meal while we were in Calgary. So there was a place sort of on the outskirts called Bowls, just cheap, wonderful Korean food. And we had Ray's, I believe it was. Roy's, I keep saying it wrong, which was also Korean food and delicious. But the one so little shout outs, but the one that I really should highlight, since we're being asked, is the River Cafe, which is in, I believe it's Prince's Island Park.
Sounds right to me.
Yeah, so it's actually so gorgeous because it's in a park, so you kind of have to park and walk to it. I just saw that it made the list. There's a list that comes out of 100 of Canada's best restaurants right now, that kind of thing, and that it's number 10 on that list, which is quite something in all of Canada.
That place is fantastic, Amanda.
And, we had a little bump in the road. that morning with their service, and they handled it in the most beautiful, wonderful way that I have nothing but wonderful things to say about that cafe. And it's more than a cafe. It's a gorgeous restaurant, and definitely one of the best brunches I've ever had.
It certainly is.
And I'll definitely be back there when we're back in Calgary.
So Carrie, who's in Edmonton, Alberta, that's the answer to your Instagram questions. Carrie's a glass bead artist, and her work is fantastic. And I must say that when I was in Edmonton, I also had wonderful meals. Like I just think Calgary knows what it's doing when it comes to cuisine, and people might not necessarily. Sorry, not Calgary. I should say Edmonton. I should say Alberta, and Calgary and Edmonton in
Why
particular.
not Canada? Just open it up.
Well,
North
no,
America.
In particular, Alberta really knows what they're doing when
Absolutely.
it comes to food. So,
and in that 100 list, there are a lot of restaurants in Alberta on that list of wonderful places to eat. So thank you, Carrie, for that question on Instagram. We appreciate that.
Certainly. And if you want more details of our culinary trip, you can also become a Patreon. You just have to go to patreon.com/The Insomnia Project, and there's a whole bunch of incentives there and more content for our listeners. Amanda, that's the end of our podcast today. Thank you so much. Amanda was working on something fairly important upstairs, and I said, do you have time to sit and record? And she said, always.
Always time to talk about mail, as it turned it out. As it turned out?
Turned out, sure.
Turned it out, I said.
Turned out. Well,
as it turns out.
I think it's time for us to go to our mailbox and see if we received anything.
Very exciting.
Until then, we hope you were able to listen and sleep.